Welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we will dive into an emotional and eye-opening story that highlights the harsh reality of discrimination against people with disabilities, the disturbing indifference of some individuals in society, and, most importantly, the critical need to uphold the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, a law designed to protect the rights of those who require special accommodations. This story is not just about an incident at a clinic, it is a powerful reflection of the daily struggles faced by individuals with disabilities. You will witness an intense confrontation, ranging from the selfish anger of an entitled patient to the strong reaction of medical staff, who not only stood up for their patients but also fought relentlessly for fairness and justice. In particular, the narrator, a dedicated and experienced nurse, was pushed to their limits, losing their composure and shouting directly at Karen out of sheer frustration. This rare outburst in a medical setting speaks volumes about how tense and unjust the situation had become, proving that even the most patient professionals have breaking points when faced with blatant discrimination. Beyond the dramatic elements, this story delivers valuable lessons on compassion, respect, and how each of us can contribute to positive change. If you find this story insightful and meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more inspirational stories. Together, we can build a kinder and more inclusive world. I am a registered nurse, RN, 33 years old, with a deep passion for healthcare and a strong commitment to my patients. Currently, I work in two completely different environments, each offering unique experiences and challenges. During the day, I work at a local clinic, where I see patients with common health concerns such as colds, allergies, muscle pain, or routine checkups. Here, I have the chance to build long-term relationships with my patients, listen to their stories, provide lifestyle counseling, and help ease their worries about their health. The clinic environment is relatively peaceful, sometimes even repetitive, but I cherish this stability because it allows me to engage more deeply with each patient. However, when night falls and the city sinks into darkness, my work takes a dramatic turn. I put on my scrubs and step into a completely different world, the emergency room, ER, where everything moves at lightning speed and mistakes are not an option. Here, every night brings new challenges: severe car accidents, heart attack patients, trauma cases, or poisoning emergencies. Some nights, I barely have time to breathe as one patient after another is rushed in. The pressure is relentless, but that same adrenaline rush makes me feel truly alive and connected to my passion. Despite working in two contrasting environments, I've realized that both are equally essential and complement each other in my journey. The clinic hones my communication skills, patience, and ability to educate patients on preventive care, while the ER sharpens my quick reflexes, emergency decision-making, and mental resilience to handle life and death situations. As a nurse, I am not just someone who performs medical procedures, I am also a listener, a comforter, and a guide for my patients during their most vulnerable moments. This career is far from easy, but I have never once regretted choosing this path. My life is constantly busy, but I love this job with all my heart. Nursing is not just about treating physical conditions, it's also about providing emotional support and reassurance. My mission is to bring a sense of security to my patients, even in their darkest hours. The ER is a completely different universe, a place where every second matters, and every decision can mean the difference between life and death. One moment, I might be treating a car crash victim, and the next, I'm handling a cardiac arrest or a severe allergic reaction. The pressure is intense, but the fast-paced nature of the ER trains me to think quickly, act decisively, and develop the mental toughness needed to face critical situations. On the other hand, the clinic moves at a slower pace but is no less important. Here, I care for patients in a different way, listening to their concerns, guiding them toward healthier choices, and helping them prevent future health problems. This setting demands patience, attention to detail, and strong communication skills. I get to build lasting connections with my patients, making them feel heard and cared for, something the ER doesn't always allow enough time for. Though these two work environments are vastly different, they balance each other out, helping me grow into a well-rounded nurse. The ER teaches me sharp instincts, crisis management, and resilience, while the clinic nurtures my empathy, patience, and counseling abilities. I have learned to balance strength with gentleness, urgency with caution, and high-stakes emergencies with the small, meaningful moments that make a difference in people's lives. Some days, I am exhausted beyond words, collapsing into bed the moment I get home. But never, not even once, have I regretted my choice to become a nurse. Because every day, whether in the clinic or the ER, I know that I am making a difference in someone's life. Beyond my career, I play another important role. I am a wife and a mother of 3. My life is a beautifully chaotic symphony, where the melodies of work, family, and personal responsibilities intertwine. Balancing a demanding career with family life has never been easy. After exhausting night shifts, I still wake up early to prepare breakfast for my kids, help them get ready for school, check their homework, and rush them out the door. No matter how tired I am, the moment I see my children's smiles or my husband's small gestures of love, I find the strength to keep going. Each day brings new challenges, but also new opportunities to learn, grow, and push my own limits. I've grown used to constantly moving, rushing from the clinic to the ER, from work to home, juggling patient care and motherhood. But it's in the little moments between the chaos, a patient's heartfelt thank you, a hug from my kids after school, or a fresh cup of coffee my husband makes in the morning, that remind me that no matter how busy life gets, I am living a life filled with purpose. And now, let's step into today's story, a moment I will never forget. That day began like any other at the clinic. I arrived at work feeling refreshed, as I hadn't worked a night shift the day before. The clinic had its usual calm, steady rhythm, patients coming in with seasonal colds, sore throats, lingering coughs, or minor cuts from cooking or gardening. The waiting room was peacefully quiet, with only the occasional sound of coughing or soft conversations between patients. Nicole, my administrative assistant, sat behind the reception desk, carefully reviewing the day's patient list. Beside me, another nurse gently explained to an elderly woman how to use her nasal spray. Everything followed its usual, predictable routine, until the clinic door swung open, bringing with it a gust of fresh morning air and an unexpected encounter. A new patient entered, and in that instant, the atmosphere in the room shifted. He was a young man, let's call him Todd. There was something different about him, but not in the way of someone who simply looked tired or unwell. What immediately caught everyone's attention wasn't Todd himself, but his remarkable companion, a stunning border collie service dog. The dog walked confidently beside him, its sleek black and white fur neatly groomed, ears perked up, and sharp eyes scanning the room with intelligence. It moved with a calm, almost regal presence, wearing a clearly marked service vest, signifying that it was a highly trained assistance dog. At that moment, I had no idea that this encounter would lead to an unforgettable chain of events. The arrival of these 2 guests brought a fresh breeze into the clinic, breaking the steady rhythm of the morning. As expected, all eyes were drawn to them. Some patients cast curious glances, while the female staff members couldn't hide their excitement. Here, service dogs were not a common sight, and the presence of a 4-legged guest always brought a sense of novelty. I was no exception. A feeling of fascination crept into my heart as I observed the dog. Its calm demeanor, the way it maintained just the right distance from its owner, and how it seemed to sense Todd's every breath made it impossible for me to look away. Beside me, a few colleagues began whispering to each other, their eyes sparkling like children who had just discovered a new toy. One of them murmured, "Oh my God, look at it! It's adorable!" Another chuckled softly, trying to appear professional but failing to hide her excitement. "I wonder if it likes being petted." I stifled a laugh. That question was all too familiar. Whenever a dog entered the clinic, whether a pet or a working dog, it always became the center of attention. But I knew well that service dogs weren't just pets, they were companions, eyes, ears, and emotional anchors for their special owners. Taking a quiet breath, I adjusted my white coat before stepping toward the reception desk, ready to welcome Todd and his companion. Regardless of the reason for Todd's visit, his and his dog's presence had undoubtedly made the clinic feel livelier. As soon as Todd stepped in, my administrative assistant, Nicole, quickly looked up from her computer screen and flashed a professional smile. She always had a way of making patients feel welcome without overdoing it, a perfect balance of politeness and warmth. "Hello, welcome to the clinic. What brings you in today?" Nicole's voice was gentle but clear enough to rise above the quiet hum of the waiting room. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze briefly flickering to the border collie standing patiently beside Todd, its ears perked in alertness but showing no signs of anxiety. Todd subtly adjusted the leash in his hand, almost instinctively, before answering. His voice was deep, slightly raspy, perhaps from fatigue or an underlying health condition. "I haven't been feeling well. I have trouble breathing through my nose and a tightness in my chest." Nicole nodded sympathetically and quickly pulled a patient intake form from the drawer beneath the reception desk. "Please fill this out so we can assist you better." She handed the form to Todd while glancing briefly at Abby, the service dog who remained calmly by her owner's side. Another patient nearby also stole a glance, clearly curious but hesitant to ask questions. As Todd took the pen and began filling out the form, my colleagues and I couldn't help but be drawn to his remarkable companion. Abby was incredibly composed, not fidgeting or overreacting to the unfamiliar environment. Just one look into her eyes, and I could tell she wasn't an ordinary dog. I wondered about Todd's story. What had brought him here, and what role did Abby play in his life? While Todd filled out the form, my colleagues, including the medical assistant, MA, and radiology technician, Rad Tech, couldn't take their eyes off his four-legged companion. The border collie, with her soft black and white fur and intelligent eyes, sat obediently at Todd's feet. Though she wasn't tethered tightly, she never strayed even half a step from him. Every time Todd shifted slightly, she instinctively adjusted her position, like a loyal shadow. Her presence brought a strange warmth to the room. The waiting area, usually quiet and monotonous, suddenly felt more lively. "Oh my gosh, she's so cute," one of my colleagues whispered, eyes gleaming. "Look at her, so well-behaved and smart." A few others nodded in agreement, clearly just as captivated by the special guest. In a place where we constantly dealt with illnesses, injuries, and stressful situations, the arrival of such a well-mannered dog was like a refreshing breeze. I crouched slightly, gently extending my hand, waiting to see if the dog was comfortable before touching her silky fur. The soft texture beneath my fingertips made me smile. So precious. I wonder what her name is. I thought to myself, but before I could ask, Todd set down the pen, looked up, and smiled. "Abby," he said, as if reading my mind. I glanced at the dog. The name suited her perfectly, gentle, endearing, yet full of trustworthiness. "Hello, Abby," I murmured, my voice carrying a hint of affection. Abby tilted her head slightly, ears perked up as if listening to me, but her eyes never left Todd. There was something truly special about their bond, not just the relationship between a pet and its owner, but a deep connection between two souls. My curiosity about Todd and Abby's story grew stronger. What was he going through? And how had Abby helped him on his journey? At that moment, it seemed like everyone in the clinic had momentarily forgotten that this was a medical facility, usually filled with illnesses, prescriptions, and the weary sighs of patients. Instead, the atmosphere had become lighter, as if Abby had brought a touch of magic to soothe the invisible tension that always lingered here. Some of the waiting patients had also started paying attention to Abby. An elderly woman sitting near the window smiled gently, her gaze warm as she watched the dog. A young boy, clutching his mother's sleeve, whispered something excitedly, perhaps asking if he could pet Abby. But the dog remained in her position, ears alert, eyes locked onto Todd. This small moment made me realize that even in a stressful medical environment, sometimes all it takes, a well-behaved dog, a kind gaze, can ease the tension in the room. But then, I quickly reminded myself of my duty. Todd wasn't here to be the center of attention or to bring joy to us, he was here because he wasn't feeling well. And that was the most important thing. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture, and shifted back into my professional mindset. "Todd," I called gently, drawing his attention. "We'll bring you to the examination room now. Do you need any assistance?" Todd looked up, his eyes weary but calm. He nodded, set his pen down, and gave Abby's leash a reassuring squeeze. I led the way as Todd and Abby followed quietly behind. As we passed through the doors into the examination area, I couldn't help but wonder, what was Todd's story? What had brought him here today, and just how important was Abby in his life? Perhaps I was about to find out. Me, hello, Todd. How are you feeling today? What brings you in? Todd, offering a tired smile, rubbing his temple. I don't feel well. I've been congested and have chest tightness. It's been bothering me since yesterday. Me, nodding, voice full of concern. I'm sorry to hear that. We'll do everything we can to help you feel better. But before we start, may I ask why you have a service dog? As per the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, we are allowed to ask this. Todd, gently stroking Abby, who remains patiently by his side. I was born with Usher syndrome. Me, slightly furrowing my brows, recalling my medical knowledge. Usher syndrome? What is that exactly? Todd, taking a deep breath, his voice slightly somber. It's a genetic disorder that affects both hearing and vision. Over time, people with it lose their ability to hear and see. For me, it started when I was a child. At first, I just had some trouble hearing, but then my vision began to fade as well. Me, softly, eyes filled with empathy. I'm so sorry to hear that. That must be incredibly difficult to deal with. Todd, smiling faintly, lowering his gaze to Abby as he strokes her fur. It is. But Abby helps me a lot. She's not just a service dog, she's my best friend. Because of this condition, I also struggle with anxiety, and Abby is trained to detect signs of distress. When I start to panic or feel disoriented, she calms me down. Me, nodding, glancing at Abby with admiration. That's amazing. She must be a very special girl. Todd, grinning proudly, patting Abby's back. She is. She's a border collie, 3 years old now. We've been together since she was just a pup. I honestly don't know what I'd do without her. Me, smiling, speaking gently. You're very lucky to have each other. If you need any assistance filling out your paperwork, please let us know. Todd, shaking his head slightly, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you, but I can still see a little, just blurry. I can manage. Me, nodding, adjusting the documents in my hands. All right. Let us know if you need anything. I'll get the exam room ready for you now. Todd, offering a small, grateful smile as he pulls Abby closer. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I stood up and walked away from the reception desk to prepare the exam room for Todd and Abby. Just as I took a few steps, the clinic's front door chimed. Another patient had arrived. I turned slightly, wondering if today would be just another ordinary day or if something unexpected was about to unfold. According to Nicole, a woman had just walked in. She looked like a version of Kirstie Alley, and was handed a form to fill out. Karen took a seat near Todd and Abby, but before long, she started displaying signs of irritation, repeatedly shooting glares at them. Moments later, Karen stomped over to the reception desk. She slammed her completed form onto the counter in front of Nicole, her face twisted in annoyance. Karen, snapping, her tone sharp. Here, I'm done filling this out. Nicole, glancing over the form, maintaining a polite yet professional demeanor. Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I see that some information is missing. Would you like some assistance? Karen, crossing her arms, irritated. No, I don't need help. Honestly, I don't feel comfortable here. Nicole, remaining calm, her tone measured. I'm sorry to hear that. Is there something we can do to make you feel more at ease? Karen, jerking her chin toward Todd and Abby, her expression one of disgust. Yeah, for starters, get that filthy dog out of here. Nicole, eyes widening slightly, momentarily taken aback but maintaining professionalism. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't do that. Karen, raising her voice, indignant. Why not? It's unsanitary to have an animal in a sterile place like this. That thing has no right to be here. At that moment, the sound of an ambulance siren echoed from outside. Abby's ears perked up instantly, and she let out a soft whine, sensing the tension in the room. Karen, suddenly yelling, her face flushing red. Shut up, you filthy mutt. Todd flinched and immediately bent down to soothe Abby, his hand tightening around her leash. Todd, quietly, trying to remain composed, "I'm sorry." "Shoo, Abby, it's okay." Karen, letting out a derisive laugh, her voice dripping with scorn. "Yeah, right. That mutt isn't even a real service dog, is it? I bet you just bought a vest off eBay. Fraud." Nicole pressed her lips together, clearly trying to keep her composure, but Karen kept ranting, her voice growing louder, demanding that Todd and Abby be thrown out. Hearing the commotion, I decided to step out to the reception area and intervene. Me, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Hello, ma'am. How are you feeling today?" Karen, still fuming, arms crossed. "I came here for a gynecological issue, but that dog is noisy and stinks. I demand that you get rid of it immediately." Me, slowly and clearly, "I'm sorry, but under the ADA law, we cannot deny a disabled person and their service dog access." Karen, mouth agape, then screaming, "What? He's abusing that dog." I sighed, realizing that Karen had no intention of cooperating. Me, more sternly, "That's enough. If you don't calm down, I will have to ask you to leave." Karen, slamming her hand on the counter, speaking through gritted teeth, "Fine. I want to see that dog's papers." Me, shaking my head firmly, "You have no right to demand that. I think it's best if you find another clinic." Karen, furious, almost shouting, "Why should I leave? He and that filthy dog should be kicked out." At that moment, I noticed Todd showing signs of distress. He clutched Abby's leash tightly, his breathing becoming rapid. Abby sensed her owner's anxiety and immediately stood up to alert him. Suddenly, Todd wobbled, then collapsed face first onto the floor, his head hitting the edge of a chair with a loud thud. Me, panicked, rushing to check on him. "Todd, can you hear me?" Nicole immediately called for an ambulance. I tried to assess Todd's condition, but before I could react, Karen stepped forward, looking down at him with a sneer. Karen, mocking, cold voice, "Stop faking, you idiot." She even nudged Todd's leg with the tip of her shoe, as if testing whether he was really unconscious. I was stunned by her heartless action. Me, furious, glaring at Karen, "What do you think you're doing? Step back immediately." Right then, the medical team rushed in. They quickly attended to Todd while I turned to security. Me, firmly to the arriving police officer, "Escort her out immediately." Karen, struggling, still yelling, "Why is no one asking how I'm doing?" I spun around, meeting Karen's gaze with sheer outrage. Me, coldly, "You should consider yourself lucky I'm not pressing charges for assaulting a patient and staff." Karen, screaming, resisting as officers took her away. "I did nothing wrong." Meanwhile, Todd was placed on a stretcher, and Abby remained loyally by his side, her eyes full of concern. I sighed, hoping he would be okay. As the paramedics carefully lifted Todd onto the stretcher and into the ambulance, the tension in the clinic still lingered. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the worried whispers of staff and patients. And the only person who dared to disrupt that silence was Karen. She crossed her arms, her face smug and defiant, as if she were the true victim. "This is ridiculous. I was just telling the truth. That brat pretended to pass out for sympathy, and that filthy dog should never have been allowed here." Her cruel words made several people in the room shake their heads in disgust. A nearby medic took a deep breath, struggling to stay composed. No one had any patience left for Karen. At that moment, a police officer, who had already been present due to the earlier commotion, stepped forward. His expression was stern, and his tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. "Ma'am, that's enough. You've caused enough trouble and disrupted clinic operations. I'm asking you to leave immediately." Karen glared at the officer, clearly unwilling to accept the reality of the situation. "I did nothing wrong," she shouted furiously. "I have the right to express my opinion. And this clinic is just protecting a fraud and his disgusting dog." The officer didn't give her a chance to create more chaos. He signaled to a female officer, who approached Karen and gently but firmly took her arm, guiding her out of the clinic. Karen struggled, trying to pull away, but it was useless. "This is outrageous. I'll sue all of you. You have no right to do this to me, she continued to scream, but no one paid her any mind. The patients and staff simply watched in silence, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others sighing in relief. When the clinic doors finally shut behind Karen, the oppressive tension seemed to lift, leaving behind a fragile sense of peace. After the incident, the clinic management wasted no time making a decision. They filed a permanent ban against Karen, prohibiting her from ever returning to the facility. This action wasn't just to protect staff and patients but also to prevent similar incidents in the future. Meanwhile, Todd was taken to the hospital in an unconscious state. Doctors quickly performed brain imaging scans and an ECG to assess his condition. The results showed that he had a mild concussion from the fall and signs of an irregular heartbeat, likely triggered by extreme stress. To ensure his safety, they decided to keep him overnight for close monitoring. Abby, his loyal service dog, never left his side. As Todd lay in the hospital bed, Abby rested at the foot of it, her eyes watching his every movement with deep concern. The hospital nurses, who were familiar with service dogs, couldn't help but be touched by the sight. One of them gently stroked Abby's fur, whispering reassuring words, as if she understood that the dog was also experiencing emotional distress after witnessing her owner collapse. The next morning, Todd finally regained consciousness. He blinked a few times to adjust to the light, then felt a soft lick on his hand. Abby was right beside him, her eyes filled with worry. He smiled faintly and reached out to pat her head. When Todd's family learned about everything that had happened at the clinic, they were furious. His mother nearly broke down in tears from anger. "My son is disabled, and he deserves to be treated with dignity," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "We won't let this go unpunished." Within the same week, Todd's family decided to file a lawsuit against Karen for harassment and assault against a disabled person. They wanted to hold her accountable for her actions. Although the incident had ended, the events of that day continued to haunt those who had witnessed them. They couldn't forget the image of Todd collapsing, Karen's cruel words, or the unwavering dedication of the clinic staff in protecting their patients. But above all, they were relieved to know that Todd was recovering and, more importantly, that justice would be served. And like a ray of light in the darkness, the last image lingering in everyone's minds was Todd sitting in his hospital bed, smiling at Abby, the loyal dog who had stayed by his side through it all. The incident at the clinic that day wasn't just a dramatic event, it was a powerful reminder of respect, compassion, and justice. Todd, a disabled individual, had simply come to seek medical care, yet he had faced discrimination and unnecessary cruelty. If not for the timely intervention of the clinic staff, the police, and his loyal service dog, the outcome could have been far worse. From this story, 3 important lessons can be learned. Compassion and understanding are always necessary in society. We never truly know what someone else is going through, and even the smallest act, such as patience, respect, or a kind word, can make a huge difference. Discrimination should never be tolerated. People with disabilities have the right to be treated fairly and to live as normally as anyone else. Acts of disrespect or intentional harm are not only inhumane but can also have legal consequences. Justice will always prevail, though injustice may exist. With unity and determination to stand up for what is right, fairness will be upheld. In the end, Karen was held accountable for her actions, while Todd and Abby continued their lives with the support and protection they deserved. This story is not just a fleeting event but a powerful reminder that kindness and fairness must always come first in any environment, especially in healthcare, where people seek healing, both physically and emotionally. Life isn't always fair, but we can choose to be kind, compassionate, and respectful toward one another. Remember, everyone you meet is fighting battles you may never fully understand. A small act, like a smile, a sincere inquiry, or a little patience, can make a significant impact on someone's life. Additionally, have the courage to stand up for what is right. Do not stay silent in the face of injustice, as silence can enable wrongdoing. Be a force for change, even if it's just through a word or a small action. Lastly, live with compassion, because kindness not only helps others but also enriches your own soul. In a world filled with haste and judgment, be the one who listens, understands, and shares. When you plant the seeds of kindness, you will reap greater goodness than you ever imagined.